And we are live. The Porter Brothers bringing you the greatest show on earth.
The greatest show on earth.
We are growing with the Smart Money Culture Network.
We are growing with the Smart Money Culture Network. Thanks for joining us on your TVs there in Texas and Louisiana. We really appreciate you. I know we got a few people calling in and or emailing in and letting the owners know that they like the shows and this and that and the other. So we really appreciate you guys tuning in. Texas and Louisiana are both they're very wonderful people, patriotic people. There's a lot of actually Texas is the fourth largest economy in the world. And you guys have a lot of disposable income out there as well, and very, very important people. Anyway, it doesn't matter how much disposable income you have, but of course,
big money
that
there.
Makes it easier to allocate time and funding. Go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
Yeah, there's big money out there, and we're here to make a big difference. So I'm going to tell you that you have full control over how you react to everything and the information that you hear on this show.
You do. You have full control. And the reason we do the show, I'll tell you what, guys, 5 a.m., as you can imagine there on your TVs in Texas is pretty early. Even for me, I'm 1 hour ahead of you here in Washington, D.C. It's a little easier for David, of course, and for Matt, who always join us. But that's a definite commitment, right?
Yeah, that's a commitment. And you know what? A lot of the big financial people, they're committed to this every morning. They're on the markets, 6 a.m. Big Sean Gahuli, hello. Sean's up at 6 a.m.
Sean's up at 6 a.m. He knows how it is. The hardworking guy right there. Sean Gahuli, one of my old buddies from high school. We're still in touch. We've had some great times over the years. Ran into each other down in Boca Raton years after we graduated high school, college, and everything else. And it's really right where we left off. We picked up, had some great times. He's still down there, and he still has his business as well. With
one of the most important businesses for all of us, working on the cell phone towers. Climbing cell phone towers, installing all of our network.
Well, that's amazing. Exactly right. And he's got the business. He's the guy, of course, that he's got the team, he's got the company. He's the one doing it. And actually, we should have him on the show sometime. He's perfect for the show. This guy, I mean, he's like made for TV. He's been on TV a bunch of times.
Yeah, exactly. And he just published an awesome book about his two sons and their great adventures. You can find it on Amazon. Maybe he can tell us the name of it again.
Oh, wait, he wrote a book?
Yeah, it's an awesome book about his son Reef and the other one there.
Well, that's really funny. I'll tell you what, and I'll tell you it's a personal story, and I don't want to get into too much of all this stuff for everybody. But Sean Gahuli was one of the reasons why I was always so staunchly pro-life. I'm pro-life. But he was when he was a baby, when his mom had him, and he was in the womb, they told her that he wasn't going to make it. He was going to be a mess. He says the adventure of Reef and River.
I had it. I was waiting for you to stop. Yeah, Reef and River, man. It's awesome. Really cool, illustrated, awesome. So catch it on.
Check it out. It's on Amazon. Is that right?
Yep.
The Adventure of Reef and River. All right, well, check it out.
Yeah, congratulations.
Congratulations, brother. So anyway, short story, long story short on that, they told his mom not to have him, and he was not going to be okay and everything else. And of course, he ended up coming out being one of the most popular guys in school, loved by everybody, especially his dear mom loves him to death. He has 2 wonderful kids, wonderful wife, and all that stuff. So cool, man. Well, I hope people go over and get your book. Hope to see you soon too, bro. Thanks for Thanks for coming on and commenting. We know there is a lot going on. I'll tell you what, the crypto markets have pumped pretty high. I mean, they've gone pretty high, and then now really small pullback. Nothing really to get upset about. Global Boost, our coin Global Boost is sitting there at 25. Why don't I just do some live touch ups here as I'm scrolling around, and then of course we're going to bring on our friend Rice Crypto, and yeah, true story. He says exactly, and you know it, brother. You know the funny thing is, Sean, that they told me the same thing about my youngest daughter. They said don't have her; she's going to be autistic or something like that, and I fired that doctor so fast. I couldn't believe they because they didn't just tell us; they told us to not do, to terminate. They told us to terminate the pregnancy. And I told my wife, I said, look, if that God said for us to do, then that's where he did it to us because he knew that we can handle it. And anyway, she's perfect. She's perfect. Real smart, real cute, real smart. Unbelievable. I think that they should actually do a study. They should do a study on the amount of doctors that say that to people, because I think that's a crime. I think that's a big time crime. Anyway, okay, I was going to share my screen here. And I know people have different feelings about that. I'm not stuffing it down your throat. I'm just telling you my experience. There's two right there. There's two experiences right there. Okay, right here we got Global Boost. Global Boost hanging there at 2.5 cents. Okay, that is our currency. Just so everybody, full disclosure on that. We think that good things are going to happen to it. Obviously, a lot of work going on there on behind the scenes. Bitcoin on a little bit of a rebound from the lows, trading at 51,317 now. But you can see here if we go into the 7-day, it has been up here quite a bit. Ethereum down a bit as well, trading at 29.25. And these numbers here, these are kind of funny. I've noticed on CoinMarketCap, they always give the best scenario. Like for instance, if we go over here and we look at Ethereum on here, it will tell us that it's actually down 1.5, over 1.5. But on CoinMarketCap, and I love CoinMarketCap, but it'll just, I don't know where they get their numbers, but it says it's up 0.5%. I noticed this because I'm like, how can it always be up? So they must take like the lowest point and then pop it up. I'm not sure. But anyway, so that's Ethereum, XRP as well with a pretty decent pullback here. Solana too. Solana, they are all rebounding slightly off of their lows. Solana was down. Yeah, okay, they're just set back there. But you can see it was down here at 101 for a minute, popping back up at 103.88. BNB is the breakout story of the day, as far as the blue chips, I would say. 370 up quite a bit. I mean, even if this number is padded a little bit, it is up quite a bit. Whether it's over 5% on the day. XRP 54 is trading at. This dipped down as well, quite a bit lower once this chart down to, which is a pretty big move. 53 it hit down here. So make sure to watch your positions. If you're in the market trading, you can also start trading with us. Trade with us at learnhowtotrade.club. You can join there and trade with us. Matt Dixon is a very experienced trader. He is the person that is really behind that. We're trading along with him, but that is so learntotrade.club, learnhowtotrade.club, and the discount code is trade smart 10. Okay, so that's trade smart 10, and you can get on there and really breaks it down, the Fibonacci measurements, also using Elliott wave. And these markets are predictable. You don't always get them right, but they are predictable. And when I say predictable, they almost always do what they're supposed to do. I mean, that's the crazy thing about the markets is they almost always do what they're supposed to do. Sometimes they will go higher or lower or do it at a different time, but almost always they will react the way that they are supposed to react. And there's a lot of external forces that that go into that. So we're gonna have Rice Crypto here join us in a few minutes. We do, Julian Assange is really the story of the day, in my opinion. The great Julian Assange. He is, as you know, over there in London, and we're gonna do some live coverage here of this stuff. Julian, he is in jail for like a long time. I mean, like a decade or something. There was one of the things, I'm a Trump guy, but I did always feel like that was one of the things that really Trump should have done right away, was he should have given that guy his freedom. So we just went to commercials. We're on commercials there on Smart Money Culture TV. While we're doing that, I'm just going to kind of pull up some of the stuff here. But I mean, just crazy that this guy is in jail for exposing the crimes that the military-industrial complex has done. It's actually not crazy at all. It's pretty. It's not surprising, unfortunately, at all. This light is tricky for me in the afternoon. Tricky.
Oh yeah, a lot of people would consider what he did heroism.
It is heroism. I would consider the same thing. I mean, what he did was he exposed what was going on. I watched a video earlier, and one of our choppers shot down with the cannon, one of its cannons on the chopper. 8 guys. None of them were armed. 2 of them were Reuters journalists there in Iraq, and official story was, well, he thought that the 2 cameras were RPGs or something like that. And I mean, who knows? But if you don't ever have any accountability, if you never have to answer for these types of things, then you look what's going on over there in the different parts of the world, right? You have lots of people that are being killed, and nobody really knows. Nobody really knows. One side says they're killing civilians, the other side says we're not killing civilians, and we don't really know. Nobody knows, because there's no accountability. There's no accountability. And even in war has rules. And that's actually one of the reasons why they always try to make it about a terrorist thing, or it's a terrorist group, or not make it a real war, because then they have to follow rules. This is a true story. That's why it's a war on terror, and they're terrorists, and they don't have a home, or they don't have a country, or this and that and the other. And that's one of the reasons. So we wiped out about 500,000 people in Iraq during that operation. 500,000 kids, they said. 500,000 people, I don't know, a lot. Yeah. We've killed something like 39 million or something like that since Vietnam. 39 million people. And a lot of times when we're doing that, number one, we're killing the guys who are fighting, which are usually young and strong, okay? And then a lot of times with the civilians, you get in the kids and the moms and stuff like that. So really not cool. All right, so we have Julian. So Julian Assange was also instrumental in exposing Hillary Clinton. Remember Trump? Trump used to say, I love WikiLeaks.
Oh, man, I remember that.
I love WikiLeaks. He would stay on stage. Remember?
I remember all of that stuff, yeah.
These guys should all be pardoned. They're heroes. Snowden is the same. And I'm going to pull that back up in a minute. And I know some people say, oh, Snowden, he blah, 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 blah. So if Snowden is a traitor, who was he a traitor to? He wasn't a traitor to you or me.
Yeah.
He told us what was going on. He was a traitor to the deep state, to the administrative state, The same ones who are doing all the funny stuff to you now. I think that makes him a hero.
Causing all of this. Yeah,
I actually
it
know
was also a heroic move.
It was also a heroic move. And he actually said the other day, I'll pull him up first. Snowden. He said that, look, guys, you can still save because, yeah, he says, to every political leader and journalist making and writing speeches, you can't save Navalny. And remember, he's there in Russia right now. You can still save Assange. And I want to welcome everybody back as well on Smart Money Culture TV. Thanks for watching us, guys. We are now leading right into our Assange coverage. We're also going to have on Rice Crypto, another real freedom fighter here in the U.S. He'll be joining us in a few minutes. So Snowden says, to every political leader and journalist making and writing speeches, you can't save Navalny. You can still save Assange. If you're silent here, when and where you can actually influence the outcome. You were never standing up for principles. You were just hoping for applause. And he had quoted his tweet, the outrageous part of the UK's years-long trial to condemn Julian Assange to die in an American dungeon is that the victim of his crime, journalism, is a state rather than a person. This is exactly what I just said. The definition of a political offense, which the U.S. and the UK extradition treaty explicitly forbids. And I'm going to go back to that for a second, and I want to talk about it real quick. So our treaty, our extradition treaty with the UK that we have between each other, explicitly it takes out that part. So if your crime is actually against the state, you're not required to extradite them. So the UK is not required to extradite him. They're actually not supposed to extradite him. And the government of Australia has requested him back. Finally, they have requested the Julian Assange come back and be allowed to come back. So I'm going to make this again smaller just because I want to. Okay. So back to Julian here. I did reach out to Stella. Stella and I have been following each other on X for years now, since before Trump won. Let me just see here. I guess I can go over to Stella's page and get the live feed. But this is actually, if you haven't seen this before, this is an important clip right here.
The goal is to use, because the goal is not to completely subjugate Afghanistan. The goal is to use Afghanistan to wash money out of the tax bases of the United States, out of the tax bases of European countries, through Afghanistan, and back into the hands of a transnational security elite. That is the goal, i.e. the goal is to have an endless war, not a successful war. Because the goal is not.
Which is exactly what we've been saying. It's exactly what we've been saying. Endless wars. That's what the $95 billion in funding is for. That's what the $100 and something billion in funding was for last month. We've also explained a number of times, and we won't stop beating in the drum because I think we're actually starting to get through to people, that you are taxed. The government's budget is always balanced. There's no such thing as an unbalanced budget in government. They always take the money either from you via the tax or they take it from inflation. The U.S., the Federal Reserve fronts the money, okay? They print up the money and they front it at a charge of about 3%, okay? So out of that $95 billion, they're going to make close to $3 billion on it, okay? Easy money. They just did it last month too. The Federal Reserve, privately held entity, masquerading as a government entity, okay? So they front the money and then they say, no problem, we'll just tax the American citizens without them knowing. They'll never figure it out. We'll call it inflation and we'll just dilute them. And that's the scam. And that's how it happens, guys. That's how it happens. So, but nobody was talking like this before Julian. Julian was one of the first guys to talk about it. The Australian Parliament, we're getting this stuff in live. The Australian Parliament has passed a resolution urging the US and the UK to allow WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange to return home to Australia. The Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, has stepped in saying enough is enough. Due to his poor health condition, Assange was not in court on Wednesday, the lawyer stated.
And he's calling on
the
UN. Thanks so much for coming in to talk to us today. I want to first draw our viewers' attention to what's happened in the Australian Parliament. And Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has stepped in saying enough is enough. And he's calling on the US and the UK to release him and return him to Australia.
That's right. We've seen unprecedented political support shown in the Australian Parliament this week. It's been a position of this Prime Minister since coming to government that enough is enough. This case ought to be brought to an end and Julian Assange ought to be permitted to go home to Australia. But this week we saw a resolution passed in the Parliament, passed by 2/3 of the Australian Parliament, which is a reflection of the public support for Julian Assange at home in Australia, but also the support calling on the UK and the US to drop this case and to allow him to go home. So politically, there's a lot of political pressure. The Australian government has made representations to the US to drop the case and continues to do so. And we're working with them to try to seek a political resolution.
There you have it, guys. Now, if I come right over here, I'm just going to switch. This is the
my
live
organization,
feed.
Our mandate is press freedom. So we're engaged because of Julian Assange's contributions to journalism. The publication by WikiLeaks in 2010 of the leaked classified documents informed extensive public interest reporting around the world. We know that exposed war crimes and human rights violations, crimes which have never been prosecuted. Only the publisher is being pursued here. And if he is sent to the US, of course, he is the first publisher that will be pursued in this way. This will set an alarming precedent that could be applied to any journalist, any media organization, anyone who works with stories based on leaked classified information, which is, of course, a normal journalistic process. So when we say that it's the future of journalism at stake, that is what we mean. This case has been going on for far too long, as we're hearing many politicians finally starting to concede now, but 13 long years. We will already never know what stories have not been told as the result of this endless legal persecution of Julian Assange. But if this continues, if he is extradited, if he is put on trial in the US, the chilling effect will be enormous. It will impact media around the world, and it will impact all of our right to know, because of course this is ultimately about the public's right to information. We have a right to stories in the public interest. I've been asked to hold this closer, sorry. One thing as well is to remind the world actually where Julian Assange is today. We, after a fight with the prison, similar to our fight for court access over the years at Reporters Without Borders, we were finally able to visit Julian in prison 4 times between August and January. A lot of people, especially in the US, have lost sight of where he even is, but he's in a high security prison in the UK, in London, some miles from where we are now. Surely,
You move to your left into the area here. Just move to your left into the area here, that'd be great.
Well, we're going to continue to keep an eye on that. You know, let me just I'll keep an eye on that as we move forward here. Really just absolutely crazy what is going on there. I mean, this guy is a hero. He is a hero. And he should be treated as such.
Yeah, it's good to see everybody out there, you know, and they're making a stand for him.
Yes, live coverage of the Julian Assange final case for freedom. Yeah, I mean, it's if we get a few things done, if we are able to get a Trump in, which who knows? I'll tell you what, I go back and forth on whether or not he is going to be able to get in or not. Powers that be definitely don't want him to. Stuff like I heard last night at Town Hall. I mean, obviously a lot of the stuff he said sounds great, but thinking that we can go and swamp the vote and beat the algorithmic machines. I don't know. I don't know who's telling him that.
It doesn't seem realistic. How are you going to beat a machine?
I mean, we deal in machines. that's kind of part of our business. So you got a machine that's supposed to give a certain outcome, and then you have paper ballots, millions of paper ballots. Michigan requested 1.8 million ballots, absentee ballots, paper ballots, or mail-in ballots already.
Yeah, that's a lot of people going on vacation.
It's a lot of people going on vacation.
Vote,
Well, here's the thing: the precedent is that's 80% more than was requested last year. And last year, if you remember, in Michigan, there were a lot of paper ballots. It was a lot. It was a lot last year, last presidential election in 2020.
Yeah, you're supposed to go in and vote on election day.
So we have the deck stacked. You have the algorithmic magic electronic voting machines, which I talk about all the time, which I have talked about a decent amount of times, and then you have the paper ballots. And so I don't know, guys. I don't know. I mean, I hope so. But I think that should have been one of the things. The fact that wasn't one of the things that our Republican Congress took care of while they were in charge is very telling. There's nothing there is no excuse you can give for not taking care of that.
Well, we're dealing with a uniparty, and so for the to put that responsibility on the Republican Party, it's not going to pan out when you're dealing with the uniparty.
Speaking of the uniparty, so I published this earlier today. Let me just pull it up here. Wait a minute here. Live coverage. Let's hear it, Julian. Let me just pin this real quick. So now when you pin, Elon just said when you pin it to your profile, it automatically, hold on. It automatically highlights it. So you know. So that's cool. I feel like that's a good feature. Okay, I responded to him. Here's us. I said, good call. We pin and highlight our broadcast daily. In fact, we're going live here in 5 minutes. That was my response.
Cool, man.
I've been responding a lot lately to different posts. These are not the ones I wanted. The one I want is right. Oh, I am saying that there's a high, very high false flag alert today. But this is the one I was looking for right here. In the presence of fiat money to finance government, political differences between parties disappear, as politics no longer contain trade-offs, and every candidate can champion every cause. And this was a quote by Cephadian Amos.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense about the bonus checks for the endless wars.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, they all are getting paid by the same, but you know, they're all want. So you get a $95 billion bill, and we saw even with Boris Johnson wanting his $1 million to get interviewed by Tucker. You know, that just gives you a glimpse into why all these people want this bill to pass. $95 billion is a ton of money to bribe, to pay off, to, you don't even have to call it a bad word like that. You can just call it commission, you know, put together deals, all these things. I know we have Rice Crypto here in the back. Let's pull him up here. The great Rice Crypto. He joined us last week. Mr. Rice Crypto, thanks for coming on again, brother. You're on mute.
I just realized that. Thank you for having me back on. I apologize about yesterday. It completely slipped my mind, and then I got the message from David. And David was telling me that he's in Ireland, and I figured I would wear my authentic Irish scarf. This was given to me.
Oops, sorry about that.
Oh, it's all good. This is given to me as a Christmas gift, so I figured I'd wear my Irish today since, again, David's in Ireland.
I know, pretty cool, huh? David's in Ireland. He's over there. He's like, you know, he's a real expat these days. He just goes in and out of the Shenzhen zone in order to renew his visa one way or the other.
Nice.
And he's just out there doing it. What's
Sweet.
it like, David?
Well, soon enough, I'm gonna go and plant some roots in Lieberland. That's on my to-do list.
Well, I think that's the best thing I've heard.
I think they just launched a token.
We did just launch it. We're going to have the president back on. We had him on one of our very first shows, and they were launching it, and they were going to launch it and everything else. It's not merits though; it's something else, which I thought was not interesting. I mean, I just noticed it was they were calling it Lieber or something like that, right?
I think so. How do you pronounce Vit's last name?
Jedlicka.
Okay, I've always had problems with that. David, I was curious, just since you're in Ireland and you guys were talking a lot about Julian Assange, it would have been great if you could have been out there covering the footage directly in the UK.
Yeah, I know. I think I'll be over there in a couple of weeks. It's an easy trip, of course. But yeah, it is good to see the people out in support of him. I love to see it.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
crazy.
it's as we really start to grow this thing, which is I just got a call again, even from our producer, and everybody's really liking the show a lot, and we're growing a lot, so we will have the ability to do more of that stuff as well. I've been on this doing this play, which I know is kind of funny, but it's taking up a lot of my time,
Like
and,
acting.
yeah, so
Interesting.
I tried
didn't know
out.
you were doing a play.
Yeah, well, so it was kind of I don't know. I kind of what's the word I want?
Is it a musical? Are you dancing and
It
singing?
is. It's Annie.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
But I'm doing it with my daughter. So I kind of manifested it, right? So we were like, I always said, it would be really great to be able to do play with the kids. There's the Old Town Theater right here. We're in the Old Town, Alexandria. And, but nothing was really kind of just lined up or whatever. And then it was kind of over. Most of the rehearsals were over Christmas, and I was home, and some other stuff lined up with the kids. And I said, you know what, why don't we, I Googled it, and I was like, why don't we go and try out for this play? And my wife says, I think it's a great idea. The girls all excited. And sure enough, we all get cast for the play.
Nice.
And it has been really funny, I mean, yeah, singing, dancing. I mean, I haven't done this stuff in 20 years.
What is your role?
Years.
Who are you playing? Are you Daddy Warbucks?
No, I'm not. Daddy Warbucks is a real professional guy. I mean, this guy, he's like, he's got one of these voices. He just sings. You're like, wow, that's really good. And, he's been doing it. He never stopped, right? I was doing it as a kid and in high school and college and everything else. But he, anyway, he's very good. And then there's some other roles as well. I play about 5 different roles, but none of them are huge. You know what I mean? So I'm one of the servants. So that one. So I'm in almost all the numbers. Not almost all the numbers. I'm in a lot of the numbers. Dancing, singing. Doing all this stuff. And then I know it's really funny. And then
I can only imagine it. That's all. I'm just like picturing it in my head.
Then I'm the Secretary of State in the White House scene, because of course it's actually very historically put scene or play, and we should have another one coming out now. I mean, so the bank run had just happened, the stock market had just crashed, which was orchestrated by the central banks, by the central bank, and they had crashed it. Nobody knows this history, right? And even like I started to talk about it a little bit, and then I just kind of shut up because all right, whatever. No one's ready to hear it there anyway. Talk about it online and to other people, but not there. They're like, think I'm crazy. But so we had the central bank. Thanks, Dr. Ehrlich. Great discussion. Great to have you here. We're going to talk as well a little bit more about freedom and Assange and everything. So there's the Secretary of State was a guy named Cordell Hull. So I'm Cordell Hull, and I'm talking about Hitler and these other things coming up and all this stuff. And then as well, I don't know, a few other parts. I have a bunch of changes. It's pretty funny. It's awesome. It's pretty funny. The main thing is that it's with my daughters.
That's all. I mean, that's the best thing that you could do is like spend time with family. So I commend you on that.
Yeah,
I'm not going to knock what you're doing by any means, especially with the what you're doing it for. I mean, it's obviously it shows how much of a dedicated father you are.
Yeah,
you can call him a dork. You can call him a dork.
So let's talk a little bit about what we have going on with crypto, and then I want to talk about Assange. You know, it's actually very intertwined. People don't realize that, but it is. You know, Julian, one of the ways that he was able to do stuff is because he bought Bitcoin very low, or I don't know if he so much bought Bitcoin, but a lot of people donated Bitcoin to WikiLeaks when Bitcoin was, you know, $3,000, $5,000. And so that enabled them to do a lot of stuff. And that's what we've been talking about. Go ahead.
I did an interview just a few weeks ago with a guy named Amir Taki, and he's the 5th Bitcoin developer to come on as a developer for Bitcoin. He created the Bitcoin improvement proposals. Contact, you know, I used to have contact with Satoshi. He was working with Cody Wilson, the gentleman that was doing the 3D printed guns.
Okay.
And Cody Wilson and Amir Taki were the ones that worked directly with Julian Assange and got the Bitcoin donations and everything set up on WikiLeaks.
Okay, let's let me do this real quick. So Stella is giving a talk here. Let's cue right into Stella, and then come back. But she's giving a live talk here in London. Let me just WikiLeaks.
And Stella is the daughter?
Freedom is the
Wife.
only antidote.
Wife of Julian
We don't
Assange.
have a decision today. Julian's life is at severe risk every single day he is in prison. He is a political prisoner. He is the world's most famous political prisoner. We know what happened to the other most famous political prisoner last week. That cannot happen to Julian. It cannot be allowed to happen. The world is watching. Julian has to be freed. Now, whatever happens in the coming days, we can't know. But we can know that we will be there for Julian and be there for our own democracy, our own future, our own ability to change policy, to change decisions, to change governments. Because if there's no scrutiny, we can't be informed. We can't be able to change, make an informed decision about who we elect. Our rights are at stake, but Julian's life is at stake. If he is extradited, he will lose his life. He will be killed. He will be killed by the country that has been plotting his assassination. And the court heard how the United States, under the previous administration, which may be the next administration, had plotted to assassinate him, who had plotted to poison him, who had plotted to kidnap him, who had plotted to rendition him. Shame. Shame on those who put journalists in prison. Shame on those who murder journalists. Shame on those who are afraid of the truth. That's not a society I want to live in. We're better than that. The UK courts are also under scrutiny. They have heard about the murder plots against my husband. They are on notice that the country that is trying to extradite him has planned to murder him. They don't deny it. They just change the subject. The whole time we were in court, the other side somehow avoided to talk about what the documents Julian published revealed. They didn't talk about the war crimes. They didn't talk about the 15,000 civilian killings in Iraq that were revealed. They didn't talk about their torture and rendition program. They didn't talk about Guantanamo Bay. They simply changed the subject. Shame. This case is brought by criminals who want to maintain their impunity, who
want to avoid the courts. They are the fugitives from justice, not Julian. Julian is justice. He is transparency. He is us. He is the public. And as long as Julian remains in prison, we are all in prison. And they are free. It cannot be. Free Assange. Be there for Julian. He would be there for you. He is there for you. He needs to be free. Free Assange.
Well, so there, I wanted to cut away to that, and I'll keep an eye on it. I gotta turn.
So the trial was a 2-day trial, and today was the end of it. We just haven't gotten a verdict.
They are supposed to come out with it today, and
Okay.
they're 5 hours ahead of us over there in London, so it's almost 6 p.m.
Yeah, so I'm saying I thought she just said that we weren't going to get answers today.
She's in the initial part of when I cut to it, she said we were supposed to get it today. So I don't know if then she said that we weren't going to get it today. I find it unlikely that
this is an appeal of an appeal, right? This is an appeal to appeal.
This is, I think so. Yeah, this is like the final appeal to not be extradited to the U.S. And the CIA has never. Obviously, they've tried to kill him. They tried to kill him.
There's if you haven't seen it, I just watched it a little bit before I came on with you guys. Most of it, Kim Iverson was covering the Julian Assange stuff, and she was sharing some pretty insightful information, some stuff that I wasn't aware of. She did mention the Pompeo CIA thing, mentioned also that it was that Trump was in the room, but something may have transpired where Trump didn't agree. She also did mention that Trump wanted to pardon him, but Mike Pompeo came in and was like telling him not to because of some specific leak. I can't remember what she mentioned, but it wasn't as if Julian Assange made the hack. It was just Julian Assange via WikiLeaks published the information. It's sad, dude, what's going on. I mean, it's obviously, when you this is a real threat to the system, and this is how real threats are treated. So when you see people out walking about doing their thing, you might want to consider like who they are as journalists, because there are a lot of people, I think, that are controlled opposition, playing parts. Maybe those parts make them look like they're against the agenda, but the agenda needs that. And as long as they have that controlled, because I just recently did an interview with Janice McAfee where John's body was finally released after over 2.5 years. It got released December 14th. And she was telling me that the first 6 months, because there was an open investigation, they only had his body in a refrigerated state, not a frozen state. So there was deterioration and degradation to the body itself. So by the time the body was actually put on ice and eventually released, Janice ultimately wanted to get an independent autopsy, but based off the condition of the body, there wasn't really much that could be said with an independent autopsy. So that's just a kind of another example of what they do to real threats to the system. So
I absolutely think that I put him in basically the same category, a similar category, I would say. David and I went over there and saw him.
He's not a journalist, but they were both very revolutionary in their own ways.
A revolutionary, yes. When he was on, we called it whatever it was. But anyway, when he was in the Bahamas, there we spent some time with him, and he was not hiding. Yeah, he was hiding. He was against the system. They're coming after him for taxes, which is what they come after a lot of people for.
But at that time, when you met him, he actually wasn't on the run. That's something I'm going to be doing a video kind of dispelling some myths. But the warrant that was issued for John McAfee was issued when John McAfee was arrested, which I believe was maybe October of 2020, maybe. I'm not sure if that's right, or 2021. I'm getting my timelines mixed up, but the warrant wasn't issued until just right before he was arrested. There's no way that he could have traveled the way he did.
I agree. He got tipped off. This is what he told
but
them.
he knew something was coming down the line, and he was
Yes.
using this, and I applaud him for using it to bring attention to what the IRS does as an unconstitutional entity.
It is absolutely. It's unbelievable, and it started as. And this is, I'm just saying this really for the viewers, not for us. We all know it, but the IRS was started the same year as the Federal Reserve, and the next year we started World War I. So this apparatus was put in place. So not only do it was put in place to steal your wealth. So the Federal Reserve, which is not federal, it's a private entity, was put into place and they tax you via inflation. That 2% inflation they talk about every year is actually a tax, and it's actually way more than 2%. And then, of course, they tax on we get to that tax because it gets legislated. They tax on the front end as well. So our actual tax rate
and the back end, every time you spend your money, you're getting taxed.
Our actual tax rate. So if you look at how much the government spent last year, it was $6 billion. 6.1, and then they plan to bring in for last year 1.6. Or let's just call it 1.5 to make the numbers easy, okay? $1.5 trillion in the taxes, and they spent $6 trillion. So your actual tax rate, because again, the government's budget is always balanced. There's no such thing as an unbalanced government budget. So your actual tax rate is $6 trillion, not $1.5 trillion. And so that other $4.5 trillion they're making up. And how are they making it up? They're making it up in inflation.
The hidden tax, 100%. To get back to the Assange thing, from what I did understand too, with what Kim Iverson was saying, and I encourage people to check out that video. She mentioned that if for some reason this trial didn't go, this particular appeal doesn't go well, there is one more route that they can go, which is more kind of like on an international stage. So it's not as if he's going to be extradited right away if he loses this appeal. But the argument that he's a political prisoner, that he's mentally not healthy, that he's physically not healthy, because I understand that his health is so bad right now that he couldn't even do like an online appearance in the court.
Well, yeah, absolutely. He's got, just kind of interesting things that would, who knows what they did to him.
And the UK passed some kind of laws which allow for non-extradition to take place if there's the threat involved because of political crimes, and because they're already mentioning the fact of Pompeo and the CIA and a possible assassination attempt.
Yes.
The UK should do the right thing here.
Oh no, 100%. But they're under a lot of pressure to not do the right thing. And it's really crazy. And as we were there. We've been supporters of Trump. I've been like I always say, I was a Trump guy from day one. I always was a Trump guy. But I really, some of the decisions were very poor, in my opinion. You should have pardoned that guy. We shouldn't be in this position. Should have pardoned Snowden. Should have pardoned those J6 guys. He should have immediately pardoned those J6 guys. I understand that was a risky situation. And maybe he thought, I will say this in his defense, maybe he thought he was going to pardon all these guys at the end of his term. And it's totally possible. And then the end of his term ended up blowing up into this, into a situation where, he didn't even know. I don't even think he really knew who to look to hear what was really going on. Because when they changed the legislation that the vice president could no longer disqualify the vote, he came out and said, oh, so it was true. The vice president could have disqualified the vote. We were right. And I think people had told him so much that, oh, no, it wasn't right. You couldn't do that he actually kind of, he wasn't sure, which I'm sure would happen to everybody. But, yeah, I don't know. Crazy times.
That's an understatement.
Yeah. So what are you predicting? What do you think we're looking at?
As far as
Trump, the election?
Well, yeah, I know you mentioned something about the voting fraud and how the machines work. I mean, and you said we have the deck stacked against us. It's a rigged game that we're playing. For one, it's a selection process, and I'm not really pro any politician right now. I'm not. Yeah. I don't adhere to any party politics. I look at it as right wing, left wing, same bird. There's a lot of things that Trump could have done differently that would have been better for our nation. So with that being said, I kind of think that, one, if Trump doesn't make it to the election or Trump doesn't get elected, there's going to be a lot of inner turmoil in our country, which could result in something like a CW, something that we experienced back in the Abraham Lincoln time period of America, just to be a little cautious of what we're talking about. But I also think that both Biden and Trump are just a little too old for the job. I think that we need to start getting some younger blood in the game. We don't need to be having people this old in office where we're questioning their health mentally and physically. I just think that that's kind of a travesty that we're kind of getting down to that. Then we also have the situation where I'm not sure if Biden's going to make it. And I've heard, and I don't mean like him passing away or anything. I just not sure if he's going to continue the race. So maybe he gets
it looks to be like an act.
Well, they can do a switch right at the end, right as soon as they go to
he's like, oh, I'm too old. Oh,
and then the constituents can come in, and that's where
they're like, okay.
There's all the talk of Michelle Obama or Michael Obama, however you want to look at it, and the possibility of Gavin Newsom, maybe a combination of the two. So that's going to be interesting to see. But I mean, all signs just point to trouble ahead, no matter how you look at it. I mean, with the border situation we have going on, with what's going on with the Federal Reserve, interest rates, the pressure is happening, inflation, everything that's happening. That's just internally here in the United States.
Well,
then we can look externally.
That's what I was going to say too. Is if either side wins, if the other side wins, or if Trump does get in, there's probably turmoil. And then if he does get in, I feel like, is he going to be? I just feel like, one, if he gets in, basically they let him get in, which is totally possible, and then they just don't let him get anything done. Or two, they don't let him get in, or we get another JFK situation on our hands. The deep state is no joke.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying there hasn't been any attempts on Trump's life, but I'm sure he's got the best security you can imagine. I mean, we've already seen like kind of a few little things with RFK Jr. You know, because he's not getting any sort of what's the word?
Crazy, right?
Secret service. They're not allowing him to get any protection, where every other person who runs for a political office or president gets some sort of protection.
Yes,
from Secret Service, but they denied it to the one individual that probably needed it the most, being that his father and his uncle.
He's the only one out there dropping the truth bombs too, man. I mean, he's like really just laying it all out there.
It'd be really interesting to see if somehow he's able to pull through. Now, there's some things I like about what he has to say, and there's some things that I completely disagree with.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's anti-gun. He's all that stuff. You know, it's like, yeah, none of them are perfect. I would definitely support a Trump Kennedy ticket, though. I would support a Trump Kennedy ticket. I would support a Trump Tucker Carlson ticket. That would be that's what he should do. I don't think Tucker Carlson wants the job, but then again, if you offered it to him, maybe he would take it.
I'm curious if Donald Trump was to, let's say, in theory, pick RFK Jr. to be his running mate. How does that
really? Then they'd really go after him.
Would they have to be in the same political party?
They would still be the GOP ticket.
Okay. Because we just don't see that. And in some way, I kind of like to see us go. And I've been meaning to study up on this, like how we got to this point. But I would love to kind of go back to how things were in the election time period when our nation first formed. Because if I understand it correctly, let's say Donald Trump is running against Biden and Biden loses, then that would make Biden Trump's vice president.
Oh, I don't know anything about that.
That's how they did it. That's how they did it back then, though. The second place person came in was the vice president, and now it would be a real checks and balance system.
So we're cutting away on Smart Money Culture TV. Thank you guys for watching there on your TVs in Texas and Louisiana. We will be back on your TV with the Impact Money Show 5 a.m., and 11 a.m. there. I know we have a lot of people joining in there, so thanks for joining in. So, yeah, it is. It's crazy when you start to dig into the history of everything. It's just absolutely nuts. So I have to wrap up the show. We should do this probably once a week if that works out for you. What's your predictions? What do you think we're going on Bitcoin?
Good question. Good question. I study a lot of different things and look at a lot of different things as far as charts, and I pay attention to what's happening in the astrological aspect in addition to the phases of the moon. Might sound crazy, but if you go on a trading view and you look at moon phases and you kind of look at the way it works, I think we have a full moon this weekend. So wouldn't surprise me if we see a little bit of a correction. I'm not saying 40% dump or anything, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like 20-30%. But it's I don't know, man. It's really an unknown area because we're right before the halving. It's performing a little bit higher than it should. I think it's crossed the 618 fib level before the halving, which hasn't been done before. This usually takes place after a halving. But we also see a supply crunch and a lack of Bitcoin on exchanges and all these TradFi institutions purchasing because of the ETF. So it's perfect storm. It's just we have March 11th is the end of the bank emergency loans that they enacted when the Silvergate Bank and all that stuff started happening. That's going to be ending on March 11th. There's the rearing of the inflation is not going away. So it's kind of a question of what the Federal Reserve is going to be doing, whether the markets are pricing things incorrectly. So I don't know, man.
So
I don't know. I know ultimately we are going up and to the right, but I don't think it's going to be obviously straight up. Nothing goes straight up without, having some corrections that are healthy to test support and resistance.
Yeah, markets don't go straight up. So,
but I just want to add, if we do go down something like 20-30%, I would definitely encourage people, not financial advice, to start making sure that you own at least one full Bitcoin.
Yeah, if we get a nice pullback, the last halving at the 60, in between the 60-day mark and the halving, which is now, we went down 20%. And the halving before that, we went down 38%. So, yeah, I would agree with you. But don't spend more than you're willing to lose.
Yeah,
don't
take loans out against your house.
Highly speculative. This is a highly speculative new market. So, all right. Well, thanks so much for joining. Let's do it again next week.
Sure enough. Appreciate you having me on, man.
Awesome.
Signing
Thank you,
out.
guys. See you guys soon.
Your voice is powerful. When combined with social engagement, it's a force for change. Decentralized media paired with free speech is the catalyst for an empowered world and a unified, invaluable ecosystem. Join Global Boost, become a champion of free speech, and help to reshape the future of media.